Now, the big story of the last 24 hours is around the Adelaide Football Club, and the CEO of the Adelaide Crows, Andrew Fagan, has been good enough to jump on. We always like to go directly to the source and ask the questions. That's exactly what we're going to do. Andrew, thanks for your time this morning.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Can we start? You've had a camp of players coming back into the state up in the Barossa Valley. Camps haven't been great for you, Andrew, in recent times. Can you maybe start? What was the intention of getting all the players together who are returning back in that part of the world in the Barossa Valley?
Obviously we had, like a few clubs, had a large number of players returning from being away. And with the 14-day quarantine period, we wanted to give the players the best opportunity to train rather than being stuck in their apartments. So we liaised with the AFL and SA Police, and we said, well, we had a vacant hotel and grounds down in the Barossa where we got approval from SA Police for the guys to both quarantine and be able to train within those grounds. And that was said to try and prepare them for the season. So, but look, what then transpired in their first training session was clearly, an error and mistake on our part, and we absolutely accept that.
So, Andrew, can you take us through what actually happened?
Ed, let me just re-emphasise, Ed, that this is an error and mistake on our part, and we completely accept that. And as you well know, because you've been on part of the calls that I've been on, that it's been hammered home within the industry and within our club about the adherence to both the AFL protocols and the broader community health protocols. And we all know this is a community issue, and we're expected to play our part in flattening the curve, and that's clear, and we're not shying away from that. In short, what happened was, and I've spent last night trying to understand this myself, we had authority from SA Police and AFL to train down there in pairs and maintain social distancing. This was their first training session, and last night I saw a communication to the group, and this is probably sits at the core of it, about the training to be conducted, and it does refer to social distancing, it does refer to training in pairs, but it wasn't as clear as it needed to be about some particular drills that were part of the training session, and ultimately that led to elements of the session clearly breaching those protocols. In short, there were groups of two who came together as 4 lots of 2, became groups of 8, and that's sort of sits at the heart of this issue. And as I said, it was an honest mistake and some poor communication, but we've clearly breached rules that we were all very aware of.
Okay, and how long did that training session go for? Was it a lane work situation? As you said, the guys have come together. How long did they actually break the rules, if you like?
Look, I'm trying to get under the lid of that, Ed. The entire training session was a couple of hours. I think that the first half of it was running. They were on a golf course environment with three or four holes, and I think my understanding is it's pretty clear, and they were absolutely maintaining social distancing and doing their running in pairs in that environment. The back half of the session had them split into a couple of groups where there was some hill running and some skill work, Ed, and that's what it was, and that's where I think the pairs became grouped as 8s, and that's at the heart of the issue here, I think.
And Andrew, is the understanding that the players in that part of the world sort of training together, is the golf course closed, or is it an open facility with people walking through?
The site that we were training on is effectively a 20 acre site, and there's a golf course that's a part of it. So that element of the facility is open to the public, but the guys had booked it out for 2 hours, so there was no interacting with the community at all. So we'd booked that out, but there may well have been some people that were able to sort of view the training from afar. So that's my understanding of it. But it's, as I said, the intent here was to, which is why we went to SAPOL to get the approval to quarantine, was to go on a very large precinct that effectively enabled the guys to, they're quarantining in the hotel rooms, they're having meals delivered to those hotel rooms individually, they're doing those sorts of things correctly, they have the ability to both access the running trails that sort of walk throughout or go throughout the facility, to have a gym that they could go into again as individuals, and to be able to use the golf course fairways to be able to run on. And so that clearly it needed to be done in pairs. It needed to be done adhering to those protocols, and it was at session number 1, and it wasn't done, and we own that.
Andrew, can I just ask you a question in relation to the South Australian quarantine laws, because they're quite pertinent at the moment in just trying to get the season started.
Yeah.
Under the South Australian quarantine laws, are you not supposed to actually stay in your room? I understand that the golf course and all that sort of thing, but my reading of it, and I may be wrong, but my reading of it is that you actually have to stay in your room. And the 2x2, if you like, is the AFL law. But at the moment, the South Australian quarantine laws is that if you're returning to South Australia, you must stay in your room for 2 weeks.
Ed, we had approval from SA Police to govern the border restrictions and the quarantine environment when you come back from interstate to both be there and to train, but maintain those elements of pairs and social distancing. So now we had those appropriate protocols in place. The issue is we then, for elements of the session yesterday, didn't adhere to it for whatever reason, and that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of, and that's what I sort of spent yesterday afternoon trying to understand.
Okay, let me sum it up then. So I reckon you've done everything right. You've gone to the AFL, you've got the tick of approval there, you've gone to South Australia Police, you've got some exemptions, and it all makes common sense that what you're doing there. You've got supervised people then, you've got a coach then, I think it was Ben Hart was running the situation. You've told the players in a letter, it might have been a bit ambiguous, but anyone who's been on planet Earth should know what's going on at the moment in relation to these situations. Unfortunately for you though, Andrew, and the club, it comes a day or on the day when the AFL through Greg Swan have put out that they think that they should get rubbed out, or anyone who transgresses should get 10 weeks being rubbed out, and also at a time when the WA and South Australian governments are pushing back against the AFL, making it even harder to get the season away. So two-part question. Do you impose the sanctions, or do you and also the AFL do so? And is it one of these ones that they're going to have to smash a peanut with a sledgehammer to make the point for everybody coming back for the rest of the season?
Yeah, look, they're all questions that I'm actually seeking some answers to at the moment, Ed, and big good ones. So we're trying to understand who. We've obviously immediately informed AFL Integrity and the AFL, so they, I think that they'll probably lead the process. We'll supply them all the necessary information. We started that process last night. And I think ultimately they'll determine those sanctions. Look, we recognise how significant this is and the critical stage that we're in, as you outlined, and the AFL does as well. Obviously spoke to Gil McLachlan yesterday and apologised to him on behalf of our footy club, and it'd be inappropriate for me to guess at the sanctions at the moment, how they might apply it. We've just got to go through that process.
Hey, Andrew, we know players generally, they want to do the right thing, and everyone's working through their situations, and it sounds as though, you've had an inadvertent, albeit a serious thing happen. What was the mood of the players when you spoke to them? They're
pretty flat. I was just actually chatting to a player this morning, and they're pretty flat. Obviously, the group that's down there, they're primarily our young players. Nearly all of them are our sort of 1 to 4 year players, and so they're there just wanting to prepare for the season. They went down in an environment where they actually almost were going to be disadvantaged because of our 14-day quarantine here. They thought this is great. The club's organised a facility for us to be able to sort of do some training, and now it's happened on day one of it. And so look, they're obviously flat. They don't need or want the attention, and as I said, it's disappointing that we've put ourselves in this position. So look, we accept that it's clearly an issue that shouldn't have occurred, and we've just got to deal with it now.
Yeah, it's a tough one for you, Andrew. I mean, I go back to round one, Das, and we had the Carlton-Richmond game, and everyone was told, come on, guys, this is what we need to do. And we turned up at the game, Das, and the commentary boxes weren't set up for social distancing. The players were drinking out of bottles, etc., etc. Everyone went off their head that night, and the next day when, as it turned out, it was Collingwood and the Bulldogs playing, we saw the singing of the song in a different way. Everyone did the right thing, and it caught on. It drives you insane in these situations that people don't get it the first time around. But this is something that is going to be a big story today. But Andrew, again, I'm just going through it, and I'm not trying to barrack for you in any way, shape or form here, mate, but there's not much more you could have done, I wouldn't have thought, from that situation other than stood there with a tape measure and pushed them apart. clearly there has been a transgression and there will be penalties involved in that, if only for the AFL to actually keep any credibility with the negotiations they're doing with federal and state governments right around Australia at the moment. So from what you're saying, you're being open and accountable and doing everything you possibly can in this situation, which is embarrassing and disappointing for everybody, but it is what it is.
Ed, you've summed it up pretty well, mate.
Andrew,
Andrew.
Thanks for your time this morning. Andrew Fagan is the Crows CEO, and never ever fun fronting up on a day like today. You can imagine how disappointed Andrew is and how frustrated the team are over there, and there's a fair bit of fallout you'd imagine still to come on that one. So appreciate him giving us the insight as much as he could.
Good on you, Andrew. Thank you very much for it. What odds, Das? What odds that maybe a rogue Port Adelaide supporter might have just been wandering the fairways down there and put them in?
About $1.01, I reckon.
So Das, you're the commentator. And you're a board member now as well. So we declare that as a Western Bulldogs board member. As I said last night, mate, people's heads were exploding around AFL circles. There was talks of, do you rub out 16 players for 10 weeks? Do you actually knock points off the Adelaide Crows? Do you give them a lose a match or 2 matches? Do you give an 8-point penalty, which would mean that they play the games, and if they win, the opposition team doesn't get 4 points, but they don't get 4 points for 2 weeks? Or any combination of the above, or is it just a fine? Is this as an opportunity, as we said there, where people are slow sometimes to pick up on these things, regardless of how much you tell them? What do you do?
Yeah, tricky, isn't it? I must admit, I'm leaning, as you said, that these are such unique, evolving, and unusual times. And you're right, people should have understood. But what you're dealing with is human nature. And if it is in the bracket of an inadvertent mistake, then to me, you've got to take that into consideration. If it was a systematic, hey, we're going to sneak up here, we're going to get our players together, we're going to get advantage. That's a very different bracket for me. So there will be some sanction for sure.
I reckon it's in the middle there. I reckon it's what's happened is they've done everything right, and then they've got together, and they're all doing 2 by 2, and they go, "Come on, let's have a kick," and they've started having maybe lane work or something down there.
As your instinct always does when you play, yeah.
I know, but at the moment, mate, when America's just gone to 30 million unemployed and the death rates are up, and we're seeing people. We're going to have James Young come on in a moment. Your business that you do for a living, every pub in town shut down. People are off. This is the time that we have.
Certainly wasn't defending it. Just actually getting the human nature part of what happened, but there will be a sanction. We need to get to a break. That was Andrew Fagan, the CEO of the Crows. That big story.